Hello and welcome to another episode of Clearing the Backlog. World and Economica, Episode 1, Part 4. So, last week I was supposed to stream but I got busy, so I wasn't able to stream last week. Anyways, in the previous story, so far Haru has agreed to stay for at least 20 days. And he'll gonna think what is planned after. Anyway, let's get started. If there was a demand for situations like that, I'd certainly never heard about them. For someone with a short fuse like Hagana to have a bunch of bratty little animals as her students, I questioned whether or not that was really a good idea. Any infractions would get a warning the first time, but the second time around she'd smack them with a stick without saying another word. It was so fitting that it was scary. I more or less know what you are thinking. Well, who wouldn't hate a teacher like that? Now that you mention it, the children got along rather well with her. Lisa said it quietly as if she were telling me a secret. It appeared that Lisa didn't actually think they got along. Well, she has been an integral part of supporting this church. She gives me everything she earns, even though the Lord warns against greed, He doesn't wish for extreme poverty either. I don't really get it, but I understand that appearances can be deceiving. That's right. If I were to make a decision just on what I see, I wouldn't have come to your aid. Feh. Whatever, thanks for the meal. I'll say that it didn't taste half bad. Wow. Haru. Okay. I guess that's how they exchange banters. But Hagana doesn't really like it much. As I stood up from my chair, something came to mind. Maybe you put a bit too much seasoning in there. I prefer stronger flavors, so it's fine for me, but... really? My folks were manual laborers and basically they always prepared things chaotically with strong flavoring. So it's a lot like that. Okay, that explains a lot. Lisa had one hand on the table and other clutching her forehead. You could say that it was something of a blind spot. I got it. Thanks. The pasta at the Big Bowl Cafe mixes salt and garlic very well and tastes pretty good, by the way. Lisa looked up at the ceiling as if to utter a prayer or something. I shrugged and opened up the computer sitting on the coffee table in front of the sofa. I returned to looking for moneymakers. The mood had low gravity, so it was common to utilize a spring when doing any weight training. Okay, I'll be right back for a bit. So far, we're live. The moon had low gravity. Okay. A rod and coil made for that purpose had been sold online and was a rather popular product. However, it was questionable how many who bought it actually used it. After all, the fitness company who made a fortune selling sets of rods and coils had managed to sell over 3 million sets, including similar items. But no matter how you look at it, any single set would have been more than sufficient. Okay, I guess scamming is still a thing in the moon and fitness company selling, yeah. I guess people need to eat. Then again, fitness companies. In fact, the population of the moon was about 700,000 people, although tourists would need that number up to 1 million. There were many people out there who would buy it and not use it, knowing that a new model was on the way. Even if the equipment was used properly, there was the matter of using it for more difficult applications. And then the user manual would neglect to note this. Yes, nobody reads the user manual. The words of my stubborn, old-fashioned father would repeat in my head while I did weight training. With weights on my arms, shoulders, backs, and abs, I would do weight balance training involving headstands and light somersaults, which would go on for more than 20 minutes. Since I wasn't aiming to be an athlete, any training beyond that wasn't really necessary. If nothing else, the people who came from the town my folks were from, the kind could never tell a lie, would all say in unison to take care of the body, for it will always be useful. With the height of net prosperity and lower gravity and the nearest unlimited supply of electrical power on the moon, physical labor was categorized as being the lowest of low in terms of recognition. I think even on Earth. But I guess, yeah, with the amount of, what they call this, things being automated in the moon, likely that is the case. There weren't any people who had to make it big with physical labor. At best, there were always the consideration of those who work in show business. But even then, the ones who got paid the big money weren't the actors who toiled away in their craft, but the people who managed them. However, after leaving home and taking the time to observe things out of the boundaries of the rules of society, I had come to understand that there was a lot of truth in those words. Even after evading the police sent to bring me back home, I realized that there was some useful advice to be had. As expected, to those seasoned veterans who escaped from the jaws of guerrilla fighters, secret police, and military juntas. I wiped off the sweat with a towel and put on my clothes, and same clothes Lisa and Hagan were complaining about before. After 2 washes, I finally got rid of the smell. I had a feeling that I had washed away something like an important mark of readiness that had been stained into the clothing in the last 3 months. Lol, we should let go of the smell. I think I had become aware of after leaving home was the people was relaxed with the smell of detergent. The word cleanliness had a rather weak image. Then again, it wasn't half bad. I stretched my back and tossed my backpack over my shoulder. Since today was Sunday and the trading houses were closed, it was an important day for me, so I could go out and just walk around. It also appeared that the culprit from the theft was arrested, so the odds of being mistakenly arrested and taken home had diminished. It's just as Lisa suspected, the culprit was a young man who also ran away from home, leaving home without any means, turning to a life of crime and causing trouble for others. This guy was clearly the typical idiot, definitely. They didn't have any plans. It's possible that he wasn't from Earth but was born and raised from the moon. As someone born and raised on the moon myself, I could sympathize. But for people from Earth, it seemed that the lower gravity was to blame for making any people lightheaded. Aside from issues of pride, many could live on the collected scraps left over from the geniuses and prodigies of Newton City, or the most great fortunes. Some would say that it was the fault of this sense of security, perhaps, compared to the people who came to the moon from Earth. Within the groups of tourists were also those who came here with some great of sense of purpose. They came to the moon to do something or another. It could be that they came to find a tranquil life they couldn't find back on Earth. Likewise, they might have come to find a thrilling life that couldn't be found back on Earth. After all, I understood that one must step forward when one had a purpose at hand. Anyway, the cost to take the orbital elevator by any legal means was staggering, and there were many hurdles to clear if you were to look for any discounts or exemptions. In any case, there were many Earth dogs who knew where they came from, where they were, and what they should be doing. Literally, there was earth on the bottom of their shoes. That was why I hated these Earth dogs. Okay. So much discrimination from Haru. I tied my shoes and left through the hallway. The place was eerily quiet. Lisa had headed out to the restaurant after eating breakfast. I knew that Hagano was still here, but outside of going to the bathroom, she would seclude herself in her room, and he couldn't even hear a peep coming out of there. I had no idea what she was doing in there, but I got eerie vibes. Don't tell me this is gonna be that last time. I hope it's not that last time. That's why I had everything I owned in my backpack. I wouldn't be surprised if you gonna took a hammer to my piece and restore it well as a She isn't a gorilla, you know, Haru. I did not continue walking down the corridor towards the living room. Instead, I went up the stairs to the second floor. The church was in a low-income area, much like everything else around. It was built upon parts of a crater that had been partially zoned, so navigating the sector was a bit complex. The entrance to the sector was along a relatively wide street, but the second and third floors portion seemed to cling to the cliffs as they stretched upward. According to Lisa, these places weren't very well off financially. The faded parts of the building here and there around the church were obvious, but they appeared neither small or inexpensive. This game is so descriptive, but yeah, it helps in setting up the mood. And we were to ascend the stairs another level, they become more like a ladder. What functioned as a handrail was actually what Lisa used to carry a basket of laundry. There was a room, or rather a storage shed, on the third floor, and past you could reach a site near the roof. The door was rotten, but there was a note on it. Is this a? Yeah, I thought it was in my imaginations, but there was. Okay, it's clearly an error. With a handwritten note from Lisa that said to always lock the door when leaving. I'm sure people had been locked out so many times. I of course have been returned through the front entrance, and with that I headed out. Okay, we're back to the street. The moon was in the middle of the 2-week-long afternoon, and the light that permeated the dome over the lunar city during this time felt rather good. Today I could see Earth from the usual place. This yard had something of an extravagant feel of it, with a large tree growing very close to a cliff behind it. I wondered if the placement of the table and chair were so Lisa and Hagano could enjoy the shade of the tree. The cliffs all around gave the place a feeling of isolation. It was a nice place. Right now there was only the noise of the laundry machine, and it was clear what belonged to whom. Looking over the jumble of streets of the 6th outer section, you could see someone on the roof casually reading something on a computer terminal, and someone repairing a roof. You could see bakeries and a dry cleaner, buildings spewing out water vapor from misshapen chimneys, and homes under construction. However, my objective wasn't to survey that area. Continued paths to Rocket Runs left the park. But before me, as what I seen from the park, before me were the buildings of Newton City that pointed in the direction of Earth. Sorry, I am cutting a bit of the explanation because it will take us forever to read this. I mean, I already get the setting, but yeah. I left the 6 outer sections business district and got on board the rather boringly named Lunar Development Train. It literally was a train from the time the lunar surface was being developed, and the station's starting point and terminus. There was a diorama of an individual in a spacesuit doing work in the lunar desert. No matter how much you could visit it virtually on the net, tourists still flocked to the diorama as if some deference of gratitude as they took pictures of it. Once, someone had the bright idea of making an incision in it to accommodate a box, so tourists would mistake it for a donation box. Supposedly, it was filled to the brim with coins. However, what that guide failed to realize was that after only a few hours, the foolish tourists would have filled the box with donation. Then they would complain to the station attendant that they couldn't put it in anymore. Thus, the plan was foiled. Okay. He didn't think it through. After that, capitalizing on that idiot's bright idea, the station attendants installed a large unmarked box to collect small changes from tourists. This is a classic example of a moment of carelessness toppling even a good get-rich scheme. There wasn't a lot of living space on the moon, so the lunar development train almost seemed to apologize as it shrank down and sped through the city. The train passed alongside the chaotic mishmash of buildings, and for a brief moment it was possible to look out the window to see into the lives of the people inside. The tourists took great amusement seeing their own country's culturally styled buildings and lifestyles. Of course, there were no cultural aspects I particularly saw that amused me at all. The moon was made of a hodgepodge of immigrants. On top of that, it was a place where people who couldn't shake off Earth's gravity gathered, so the coloring was too pale. As we passed the station, the townscape changed accordingly. From a chaotic atmosphere to orderly streets, the stateless nature of the place became more evident. Buildings, both straight and with elegant curves that did not exist in the natural world, multiplied as perfectly trimmed trees grew in number when they entered the white belt. There were many advertisements within the train directed at a typical salaryman with information on insurance for families. Again, the ground gradually lowered and the train slowly separated from it. The beautiful cityscape unfolded below, and soon as we were traveling at a height equal to that of a 10-story building. That is a very high train. Okay. No matter how beautiful a building was, there would still be provisions for the many complexities in life, as one would expect. Everywhere you looked, the green of parks could be seen, and I couldn't see in anything at this point. They could have included, visuals. I can't see it at all. This view again. Yeah. The thought of that train suddenly picked up burst of speed. Very descriptive. Well, that is interesting. It is important too for plot. For plot building, was it? Is it plot? No. Maybe, yeah. For plot building also, and for the mood. Just like Edsa. Lots of billboards. Huh. The train continued to navigate through groups of nearby buildings by going around them. Then suddenly my vision cleared up again. This was the large plaza before the Newton City Central Station. Parating na po tayo sa Central Station. The vastness of the gigantic atrium would amaze not only the travelers from Earth, but even those raised on the moon. At 162 meters above the ground, nanowires held up a massive clock and hologram screen right in the mid-air. Very descriptive. Wow, finally a new scene inside the city. I got off the train and counted the number of advertisements that came into view. There were 3 from nanotech companies, 4 from major. Why are you even reading advertisements? I didn't even bother reading advertisements when I rode the train. Haru must be bored. There were 5 from investment banks. Each and every one of them was famous for their rate of earnings and prideful. Of their proceeds, and they had the task of sweeping up all the proceeds from the wealth on Earth and pumping it in this lunar city. Listing the world's companies in order of market cap within the top 100 companies, 37 of them were on the moon. It's more than what could find in London or New York. Oh, okay. So the new Wall Street? The new Wall Street is in the moon, not anymore in New York. The number of companies abandoning Earth and setting up their main offices here were great. Oh, okay. The number that wanted to strike it big was even greater. Everyone had left the Earth. Wait, if the big companies had left the Earth, then wouldn't the economy? Yeah, the economy of Earth will suffer. unless they made a different, like, you know, branch or something, a child company. New Frontiers Gallery Focus falls in this area as long as the talent mind and the new net connection could come out on the top. The moon was clearly different from Earth, where everything the eye could see had been developed owing to a long history, and all users wielded immense power sitting high upon their thrones. Some random country couldn't monopolize power here, and because of the nuclear crisis, countries everywhere shied away from the bomb. There had been a nuclear crisis, okay? Empty place with no external annoyances. Even placing second or third in the race to come here would still be more than enough for someone to become a key figure in the city. Okay. Pretty much starting from scratch. Yeah. It's a new breath of fresh air. For example, there's a bronze bus in front of the central entrance of Central City. The model of this overly serious-faced statue that seemed to look down on pedestrians was E.J. Rockberg, who people said would have simply ended up as an excellent banker had he stayed on Earth. Yeah, stay on Earth. Right now, he was the CEO of a top-class investment bank here on the moon. Okay, did he fail? It doesn't sound he failed. At merely 29, he got involved in investing in the lunar development. Right in those days, he worked rigorously in lunar development, which few people regarded with much interest. He gambled upon mankind's career and everything he had. He got that ball rolling. And then... The difference in income levels. They work at leveling the rock to put in the soil for growing apart and harvesting crops. Was that not a job from trillions of years before? And on that note, it would have been easier to just have done that back on Earth. That was why I made sure to remind myself of this sometimes by coming all the way out to Newton City by train. Particularly, it was a place that those with little training or education would oftentimes find their big break in the city. Okay. Haru, stop belittling your parents. If you left the station and head in the opposite direction of the plaza, right before your eyes was a spot on the right-hand side of the towering building of the lunar government. Glass-filled buildings. I guess glass-filled building is a thing still. Still in 2020. Pointing to the street was a simple sign that said Schrödinger Street. And that next to it was a bronze statue of a small cat. Okay. Schrödinger Street and a cat. Should be the science district, not the business district, but okay. The cat has a slight expression in its eyes at the lay traveled with one foot and a single gold plate. Engraved on the gold plate was this: "You can't know the outcome until you open the box." Okay, I guess that also works for business. You thought that was more appropriate for the financial district. This game clearly creates my mind. The masters who come to any religious beliefs on the moon, I saw nothing wrong with petting the cat for good luck. Pet the cat on its head and run my finger along the outline of the gold plate. You can't know the outcome until you open the box. Came here for the sake of telling myself these words. There were many people who went out from being errand runners to becoming the masters of the giant buildings that line the streets. Wow. You'll never know until you open the box. There were many. I guess this is the metropolitan part of the moon, the BGC of the moon. Hot dog stands and wait, what? A million of a month to the 6 Mulan arm. Okay, I thought I first read this like mailman making million a month And ordering one hand. People go Virgin to eat a meal or considered second rate. Wow, okay. Feels the guy box lunches or just laughing stocks. Thus being caught up in the flow of walking along the street, I bought a hot dog. Work on a day off, the vendor said something along those lines and placed a fat sausage in the bun. I didn't even think about replying along the lines of, don't treat me like a fool, I at least have a stable income. Wow, Haru is so rude about these people, but yep, he is making money. Being treated as one of the regulars filled me with joy. To me, making money was a means and not an end. However, after thinking long and hard about it, the fastest ways to get rich had to be here. And had come to that decision, I had felt a great reverence for the people at the head of the pack here. And with that, I realized I actually did have a bit of fanboyism in me. So I think the guy paid my respect to the people passing by and walked off more fidgety than usual. Haru looks like that character from Harvest Moon. Underground level, above ground level, and the sky level. I was currently in the sky level and the main entrances for the buildings were here. Below, these were related companies and rented office space. The underground and above ground level portions of the buildings on Schrödinger Street were filled with countless funds and consulting agencies. While walking around eating my hot dog, I would occasionally come across narrow and compact buildings with gilded signs and atrium adorned with chandeliers and paintings. These weren't places where money exchanged hands, but rather places where those with enormous sums of money obtained official legal guarantees. Top-class law firms, accounting firms, and government outlets resided here. I am not reading that, but I guess I've read that. More detailed explanation. Schrödinger Street and Beat Street was made up of software and media companies. The Lunar United Stock Exchange could be called the city's court of wealth, a place where stocks from companies all over the world. Does that make sense? Even from Earth, the stock market is in the moon, and that would put people on Earth at a very high disadvantage, since their connection would go to from the moon and back. That's a lot of latency if you ask me. You could say this was the pinnacle of capitalism and humanity's expansion. Still capitalism, I guess. The entrance was fudged between giant screens displaying market information 24 hours a day. Currently airing as a discussion between the vice manager of the Lunar Central Bank and the famous CEO of Platinum Smith on the relaxation of regulations. All of them mid-40s could be considered quite young by Earth standards, and among someone in their mid-40s would be considered elderly. Although these two were still full of confidence and energy. I leaned against the giant steps of the stock exchange and ate the rest of the hot dog slowly. Still munching on that hot dog. Okay, that was very appropriate. However, this don't computer my bug to make money and eventually become one of the major players here. Wasn't much more than the first step achieving my dream, but attaching specific milestone to my goal made me think of how rush it was. Yeah, that's how you think of goals. Very nice mindset there, Haru. I have a feeling this would be important later, like talking about the CEO of Platinum Smith. At least 2 million moles a year work in the businesses. These were hotshots whose salaries definitely had teeth to them. But they made tons of money using their expertise and behave almost like lone wolves. Like the Wolf of Wall Street. My visions have still not been fulfilled, so I could only watch them here, but eventually I would stand shoulder to shoulder with them as either rival or comrades, instead of looking at them from a distance. Okay. I'm kinda wondering how Haru had this mindset when he's clearly underage. But I guess anyone can do that. Haru's parents must have raised him well. Think about this. Probably read a lot of books. Money, just money. The object of unbearable desire circulating here like a whirlpool. Squash the hot dog wrapper and stood impatiently. Time to head back and look for more money-giving trees. Eventually, I would be an knowledge here, and after that, while on the train, I fixed my hold on my bag while staring at the giant panoply of Newton City receding buildings. Oh my god, I can't read anymore. He rode the train again? Where are we? Oh, we're at the opening. Are we gonna get maybe I should mute the volume because I have a feeling this is music that is, would get blocked by YouTube. Sorry if you can only hear my voice right now. Yeah, this is finally we've reached the opening song after a while. This is a very catchy opening music. Was it by the Oral Cigarettes? I forgot. I think I've read on who sang the opening song. Yeah, I forgot. Anyway, I hope there would be less descriptions moving forward. I don't know, but yeah, that helps. Still, that is part of the writing. We have to respect that. Okay, let me turn on the sounds again. As expected, visiting Newton City had replenished my reserves after they had been worn down by a week of trading. Paying no heed to the temptations of consumerism found in the bustling pits, I headed straight back to the church. The scenery changed so much that it appeared as if I was no longer on the lunar surface. Even now, I started seeing more and more buildings on the verge of collapsing. Clicking my tongue at no one in particular, I jumped past trunks of building while making my way back. While getting yelled by an old fellow, I jumped off the rooftop of a 4-story building and flew into the air. I could see the lunar Chinese restaurants off in the distance. Is he gonna eat again in the restaurant? Depending on circumstances, I could get pursued by police on grounds of dangerous behavior. Yeah, was totally suited from having been rejuvenated on by Newton City. I guess one technology that they didn't integrate, or maybe gravity replication was a bit too much still. Well, it's time to get cranking and to look for stocks that would bring me the money. The moment I opened the door and walked in, bam! No, stop. A shrill of voice sounded in the air. For a second, I wondered if I had vaulted into the wrong church, but it didn't seem to be the case. I could still hear the voice. No, stop it. Oh, what is happening? It sounded like it was coming from the halls of the main building. My mind spun in the circles for a few seconds, then cleared immediately. Burglar? And the voice was Hagana? Yeah, I'm gonna read dramatically on more interesting parts. Let's save the game just in case. Even though she was a damn cheeky and arrogant woman, she was still a woman. I jumped off the back of a row of pews, flew over them, and dashed down the hall. I heard a shriek and the sound of something get flipped over. I opened the half-closed door that led to the living room, threw off my backpack, and made a tight fist. By now, my head was swimming in adrenaline and my body was fully primed for battle. The only thought in my head was advice I heard from a guerrilla fighter from the Caucasus region who had said that yelling when jumping into a situation had a negative effect. Rushing in grabbed people's attention easily. However, if you could drop down right away, you'd simply disappear from their sight and approach your target swiftly. Then, once you were within range, you get up in one go and apply overwhelming force. If your opponent was armed with a gun, just jump off to the side. He would be able to hit you. If he wielded a blade, just go straight for him. It's not as scary as you'd think. Now, if he's unarmed, just do whatever. Nah! I aimed at the dude who had just trashed the room and took a swing at him with my fist. I planted my feet with all my strength, increasing the friction, increasing my effective mass and thus the power of my punch. As long as your mass was low, the power of your attack would only be what Newton's third law gave you. Thanks, Newton. Anyway, what was it again? I forgot. Opposite reaction? My punch made a clean hit on the opponent, who had just turned towards me in surprise. With a nice sounding smack, the punch went through unhindered. That seemed to be enough. I got pulled along by the inertia of my punch, and by the time I stopped spinning on my other foot, the opponent spun around awkwardly and collapsed right there. He wasn't passed out, although he might have gotten a concussion. His eyes were zoned out and his hands, which looked like they were trying to grab onto something, were trembling and stiff. Preparing myself to kick him into the air at a moment's notice, I called out to Hagana without averting my gaze one bit. You okay? In the corner of my eyes, I could sort of make out a figure clad entirely in black. I have a feeling this is another misunderstanding. But yes, that's important. Of building relationship, that's part of the story. Sagana. She was standing motionless and silent, stuck against the wall. No audible reply came back. However, she was silent not because of the usual arrogance factor, but because she was simply unable to speak. The man grabbed onto the fallen sofa with one hand and tried to prop himself back up somewhat, and I grabbed that hand and twisted it upwards. I squeezed the bony part of his wrist and twisted it upwards and outwards. His body fell over easily, and the extreme made the intruder's thoughts quite clear. Hey, what are you? Those were words, but after I rotated his arm behind his back, putting me in a position to let me apply additional pressure at any time. This guy was a middle-aged man, about the same height of me, and he had a grimy appearance as well as a frizzy hair that was mostly thinned out. He looked like quite a crafty guy. I looked past the man at Hagana. It didn't look like he had assaulted her or anything. The only thing I could see was that the corners of her damn cheeky eyes had gotten red and that her hands were trembling a bit. If you don't answer properly, I'll kill you. Even if you remain silent, I'll kill you. I knew many deserted lots, and I knew ruffians who came from war-torn regions on Earth. In a place where there was a possibility of maybe just one murder a year, my threat probably sounded like a child's bluff. However, that appraisal depended on the circumstances. The man I'd subdued pretty much instantaneously let out a harsh shriek. He twisted his arm lightly and asked him again, "What are you, a burglar? Did you know that it's okay to punish a burglar by killing him?" Hee! This time his shriek was quite clear. "Wait, please wait. Don't kill me. That'll depend on the circumstances. What's with the mess in this room? Enlighten me." I twisted his arm some more, and he let out a squeal. I knew that it managed to make Hagana cower in fear. She was surprisingly feminine and totally out of it. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I'm not a burglar, no way. So then what are you? I'd hardly expect some neighbor to come over for tea, and then I'd get angry enough to flip over the sofa and send the table flying with a kick and rip out the carpet. The room really did look that way, like a building marked for demolition. Furthermore, I myself heard Hagana shouting for him to stop, and also her hand was trembling. Well, but it wasn't my fault. It's her fault. Oh yeah? Or aren't you the self-righteous burglar? When I said I'm not a burglar, it's true. I'm a debt collector. Okay. Debt collector? That's right. I came to collect some owed money. It's just my job. I didn't think he was lying, but I decided to look over at Hagana anyway. After Hagana stared at the suffering man, she noticed my gaze and turned towards me in surprise. Is that the case? And as she paused for a second and then nodded. Okay, it's a misunderstanding. Okay. The floor and turn around. What the? It's just a brat. If you think I'm a brat, want to go for a round 2. Training of my body had been convenient for a lot of things. The debt collector shook his hand wildly and looked up at me through servile eyes. So, a debt collector is one of those types, eh? They even have the right to do all this. Well, I figured. So what are you going to do? Huh? I said, what should we do? Excuse me. Should we call the cops? Or are we really gonna do some debt collecting? The debt collector clearly gulped. However, afterwards, he lowered his gaze. At most, I'd be lectured at all night in detention. Besides, if you call the cops, I'll just redeem this loan statement. I don't really want to since it just cost me some fees, but I could totally just go get the courts to foreclose on you. Well, aren't we a spunky one? I moved my knee up to scoot over to him, but he suddenly pulled back, so I was unable to force him down anymore. And with that, I remembered one thing from my training. If your opponents stop yielding, go for negotiations. Well, you're here for the interest and fees, right? Yeah, see, you understand, right? In this world, you can't just borrow money and refuse to show even the smallest signs of paying it back. Besides, I totally get treated like trash. The debt collector glanced over at Hagana. Following his lead, I also looked over. She was cowering against the wall like a pinned butterfly. When the money was lent out, it was all humility and everything, you know. Well, I guess Lisa was lowering her head. Oh my god, I keep pressing the right button. Well, I kind of see that. Oh, you see, right? Oh, you see, right? Why do I have to put up with being called a dung beetle or space trash? Looking at Hagana past the grumbling debt collector, I could see her looking downwards and staring at us with sullen, childish eyes. Besides, it's not like I'm asking for the entire principal back. I guess this will be the plot or the story of it is unfolding. I guess let's see what happens. I know that it's possible anyway, but this is also a business, so I'd like for the interest to be paid back at least. And as he said that, there's no money here for you. Hagana said that, okay. Hagana yelled out. The debt collector shrugged and turned towards me with, "See, I told you," written on his face. He's probably in the right. I heaved a sigh of resignation and looked at him. So, how much? What? The interest. How much is it? Oh, his face lit up. Don't tell me you are gonna. Depends on the amount. Ugh. Saying too much might result in the officer offers retraction, but saying too little might end up with losing money. I could see the guy tackling this question in his mind for a moment until he finally came out with an answer. 200 mules. I remembered how Risa reacted when I given her 200 mules. So this was it, huh? So that's this month's interest, or this year's interest. This month's, since my top blew over and did a bunch of things, this is lower than usual. It's actually 6% annual interest on a 50,000 mule principal. Compound interest is kind of annoying, so I had just set it at 250 mules a month. Since I had totally thought that this was some shady loan deal, I was surprised at the relatively low interest rate here. To hide my surprise, I ordered him coldly. Show me the loan agreement. What? At first, the debt collector was speechless, but eventually he reluctantly showed it to me. Those numbers he quoted were certainly written down here. I sighed again and stuck my hand into my pocket. Here. I had run out of 100 mule bills, so I carefully counted out 200 mules worth of bills and handed it to him. I reached it out carefully as if I would smack him in the moment he lays money on the money. After receiving the money, he hunched over the money and counted furtively. It's good. Alright. Well then, I'll be off. Ha! Wait up! I swept his leg quickly from the front leg, causing him to fall over. Then that got hurt. And I got up, walked over him, put in his face, and shouted down. You got some nerve not giving me a receipt. Aren't you a student? You should still give me a receipt. Not quick thinking, Haru. Quick thinking. You tell me. After I said that, the debt collector resigned himself, cut me a receipt, and returned dejectedly. But you didn't had to kick him just because he didn't give you a receipt. I guess he was running? I don't know. I leaned against the magnificent door of this church, in which hung a crucified man. Okay, this is Haru, he doesn't know Jesus. And of the man's faint silhouette before looking back at the receipt in my hand. 200 mules of interest was probably a large amount of money in these parts. If I wanted to earn 200 mules with the job Lisa offered to refer me to, it would take 4 to 5 days worth of income to come up with that amount. Furthermore, in that period of time, there would be food expenses and rent, along with other consumables and such that must be paid. In other words, low income meant you couldn't save up money. If you couldn't save up money, you couldn't invest. If you couldn't invest, you'd be forced to make money by selling your time forever. Wow, thank you, Haru, for being realistic. A shovel could not fill a giant hole. Yeah, definitely. Speaking the truth. I think it's the second time you talked about not seeing snow before. Simply put, that's why these 200 moles weren't just 200 moles to me. Something that there could become 10,000 moles or even a million moles in the future. Yep, definitely. When Lisa returns, I'd have to get my money back. At least I saw her putting 200 moles in the cupboard. I wasn't going to let her just say she didn't have it. What time is it? Okay. So far, 10 minutes. Wow, average time of 49 minutes. Thank you to the viewers, at least watching. While pondering that, I crossed the prayer hall and returned to the living room. Hagana was putting the furniture back in place. She was emotionless, but somehow I got the feeling that she was angry. It was probably the rough way she was handling the overturned table and kicked up carpet. I would prefer not to refer to her by something that would give off an aura of prettiness, such as girl. Oh my god, I'm tired. However, Hagan unmistakably possessed a delicate female chromosome. I know how to read that, huh? So she was as weak in the body as she was strong in spirit. Then suddenly, people correct me. That's actually the male chromosome, but no. Yeah. Let's move forward. It would be a different story if you had just arrived from Earth. But for people who have lived on the moon for a long time and have gotten accustomed to the low gravity, they'd only be able to deliver a proportionally low amount of force as well. She was trying to put the big sofa back in its place, but it wasn't going too well. She must have noticed me standing in the doorway, but she hadn't asked for any help. She looked like she was just short of telling me that she wouldn't ask for help from the likes of me. I thought she was a cheeky girl, so there was no obligation for me to help. Haru is still mad Hagana, huh? Besides, she hadn't even thanked me yet. I walked past the doorway and was about to go back to my room. I heard a voice just as I was passing by Hagana. Why won't you help? She couldn't move the sofa back in place because she couldn't lift it back all the way up and the leg was stuck. She tried picking up from different angles, but none of those attempts worked. Even though she was panting lightly, her eyes were fixated on the task with the weight of the dumbbell. Furthermore, it looked like her princess hubris was in full force. I sighed heavily and replied to her, why do I need to help if I haven't been asked? Haru still being an ass. Sure enough, Hagana lowered her head. With her slender chin and slender neck, her lowering her head made her a textbook example of a delicate girl. My eyebrows wrinkled as I wondered if she was really putting on a show. But she answered me with the following. If I ask, would you help? Could you refuse that, Haru? Come on. Making a girl speak those things like that. Yeah. Good. At least Haru knows how to speak to Hagana. Why am I so mad about this? Help me out. What? Good. I looked at Hagana in surprise. She was staring back at me with her pure black eyes, but it's clearly red. Okay? Are you deaf now? This is gonna be a fight. Kenka ni Naru. She continued with a 2-1-2 combo just like a relentless princess with a whip. When they push, retreat. When they retreat, push. Hagana's great at arguments. While feeling regret, I really had to help her now that I said I would. Alright, I get it. What was that last one? Okay, that's correct to cut it out. Oh, look at that face. Hagana's clearly doing a puppy face. She asked me to repeat what I said. I clicked my tongue angrily. Hearing that, Hagana totally looked condescendingly at me, wondering what was with this baboon. I felt that it's not my best interest to let Hagana into my view. I averted my eyes, put my hands on the fallen sofa, lifted it up without my bending my knees. Lifting it above her body height was a little bit of rebellion on my part. Keeping in that opposition, I asked her, "Oh, where would you like this place, my lady?" I asked her, injecting ample amounts of disdain into my tone. However, Hagana didn't show any signs of caring. She looked over the carpet immediately and pondered. Oh my god, I'm tired. I didn't drink water this time. I can't read anymore. Really got on my nerves. The rear leg should line up with this spot. The sofa should face perpendicularly to this way. After being instructed briefly, I lowered the sofa as she had instructed since I didn't feel like nitpicking. It's a bit crooked. Being told that, I gritted my molars, took a deep breath, and was somehow able to suppress my anger. Is it okay now? Satisfied? Yeah, it looks that way. Hagana nodded and turned around immediately to start collecting the various little items scattered on the floor. No words of appreciation came my way. I guess we can stop here for this part. That's an interesting happening so far. I guess this is how the story would unfold. So far, if I would guess it correctly, Haru would help Lisa and Hagana repay back their debt if he feel like it. But currently he has no intentions of doing so, and has no obligations of doing so. So let's find out on what should happen, on what would be the driving force that would make Haru help these two, or would he even help these two? We don't know. We have no idea. That would be clearly against Haru's way of living, of making money by paying somebody else's debt. Well, we'll find out next time. So that's been the part 4 of clearing the backlog, World and Economica episode 1. We're still in episode 1 and we just got past the opening song. Yeah, I think we would reach up to like part 30. Hopefully not, but that would be content, and content is nice always. So yep, once again, thank you for watching. This has been Coffee, reading you a lot of details about the moon and kinda doing a bit of voice acting for that guy that Haru punched. For the loan shark, was it? Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you next time. Goodbye.